So we will talk about what are the different activities which happen in the BFSI world from the analytics and data science point of view. But so BFSI is an acronym for banking and financial services, right? And at this point of time, I will borrow my marker as well. Just allow me a second. Yeah, so it's an acronym for banking and financial services company, right? And insurance as well. That's why so within banking, we can break it down to, I mean, like there are many ways of looking at the bank and financial services and insurance industry, right? So this is just one way of breaking down into what a banking is, right? So you can think about what is the type of the banking. So whether it's a personal banking or it's a commercial banking or it's a central bank, right? And what do they do and who they cater to. So if you look into the personal banking, the target for that is the retail customers. And when we talk about the retail customer, it's a customer who basically visit a branch for depositing, for doing credit card transaction, for debit card, for a variety of different things, right? I mean, transferring the money for demand draft. So that's what the personal banking is all about, right? So that forms basically a major chunk of any of the banks like SDFC, for example, you're looking at, right? Or ICICI, right? Or if you're looking at, some of the US banks like Wells Fargo, right? They focus a lot on this area, which is the personal banking, and that is meant for the retail customer, right? And then we have the second pillar of the banking, which is for the small and large medium enterprises, right? Or what we call as a SME, small medium enterprises. Or in US, what they call is the small businesses, right? That is the industry term that the people use there. So small businesses or small medium enterprises, and they basically do everything what you see in this pillar, but they do it for the company. So this is more like the B2B sort of segment. This is the B2C segment, right? And then we have other areas as well. And they have, besides all the things that you have over here, they will also do payment processing. So for example, if you're running a startup, right, and you have to process the payments, right, or you have to do the payroll for your employees, or you have to have a service where people can come in and swipe their card, or you accept a certain type of payment, and all of that is basically covered in this, right? And the last pillar that we have in the banking is for the central banks, right? These are the banks for the banks, right? Can anyone think about any examples of a bank which is meant for a bank? So where the companies will not, that's exactly right, Souvik, sorry, my bad. So these are, banks like RBI, Reserve Bank of India, right? So they're not necessarily, you cannot go and open an account in RBI, right? Or, if you're running a startup, you cannot go and say, okay, RBI, can you please give me a loan for that, right? The main purpose of the RBI or the Reserve Bank of India is to set the process and set a mechanism in place for all the other banks to follow, right? They decide what should be the interest rate, keeping in view of the inflation, keeping in view of the growth, and whole host of variety of factors, right? What exactly should be in terms of the social policies or the economic policies and so on and so forth, right? So they do all of that, and they also make sure that there's a tab on the performance of the bank, whether they have the required amount of money to do the lending, whether they are keeping the money in the right sort of investments where they're supposed to be doing, and so on and so forth, right? So that's basically the broad umbrella third category. In interest of time, I will continue to move forward. The other big section of the BFSI is what we call as a financial services and insurance, right? Over here, you see a variety of different things that you would have seen. So you have internet banks. There are like banks which only do banking on the internet, right? To save the cost in terms of all the overhead, the branch cost and stuff like that, right? So totally based on internet. And when we had ING, right? I mean, that is a bank which was only focused on internet. They may have certain branch, but mostly the internet. In US, they have the same bank which is called as ING Orange. That again only focuses on the internet bank. So basically, you can go to the bank in terms of the digital outlet, but not a physical outlet, and that basically ensures that you get a better rate, better customer service, and so on and so forth, right? You have investment houses and brokerage, right, where people will go to get advice in terms of what stocks to buy, what debt funds to invest in, right? You have ICICI Direct, you have SDFC umbrella, you have Share Khan, you have a variety of different things. All those are basically the term that we use for those sort of entities, which is the investment and brokerage, right? In brokerage also, you have the erstwhile financial entities like Lehman Brothers, right? So they do not necessarily focus on lending the money, but they basically act as a mediator between two parties, whether you want to assess somebody in terms of the merger and acquisition, whether you want to assess somebody in terms of making an investment, or you want to go for an IPO and stuff like that, right? So now, after the credit crisis in 2008, what has been mandated by the most of the governments is that you just cannot be standalone investment and brokerage houses. I mean, with a certain checks and balances, but you should also have a sort of like the credit and the loan and the deposit as well to keep you healthy over a period of time. But even now, you will see some of the financial entities which just do this, right? Because they're not necessarily a bank. So they cannot attach bank in their name unless they want to take a deposit and they want to take the loan, and they have to comply with some of those policies. Srikanth is asking example of any of the internet bank. Yeah. So I think DBS Singapore operates as an entirely digital bank in India. I don't think they have a lot of branches, but sometime back I had done transaction with a bank called ING Orange in US, and they were entirely based on internet. Then we have payment processing companies, right? I mean, everybody uses them. So you have Paytm, you have Square, right? You have, I don't know, I mean, you have many other, PhonePe, all of those are basically a part of these payment processing, right? Which is basically moving the payment from party A to party B, right? And how do we facilitate that? And there is economics there that basically works out for them, right? Mortgage is a branch which basically is also called as home loan, right? But the mortgage is a broader term which covers small size home loan, medium size and large size, what we call as a jumbo loan, right? So it could be anything. Mortgage could be mortgage for a house that you're buying, or mortgage could be for a property that you want to invest in, and there are banks and financial entities which will make you happen for those things. Insurance, everybody's aware of that. I mean, you buy the motor insurance, which is a car insurance, or bike insurance, right? Or you will have other sort of insurance like the personal insurance, right? Or you will have property insurance, right? You will have variety of different health insurance, life insurance, all of those are covered in the insurance vertical. This one is slightly uncommon, but we have a good number of examples over here, which is the NBFC, non-banking financial corporations, right? So, I mean, they're not necessarily a bank. So they do, for example, gold loans, right? They do some other activities. They can give you the interest, right? But they cannot hold the deposit from the customer. So they will actually have some other mechanism of financing themselves, but they cannot take the deposit. So if you want to take a deposit of a customer in a saving account or FD and so on and so forth, you need to be having a banking licenses. Credit union is a term which is not very common over here, but when I was working for a company called Texas Instruments in Dallas, US, they had a credit union called Texan, which basically only facilitates the transactions for a particular company's employee, right? Now there are banks which only operate, for example, one state in the US, right? So they do not do any transactions with anybody else from outside the state. They're only focused for that because they want to facilitate the free movement of the money and liquidity in the system. There could be many different motives behind that. They want to take care of the population that they're actually catering to, and so on and so forth, right? So that's basically a broad view of the financial services and insurance. What are some of the examples of a banking BFSI product? So you can see, I'll give you a minute to look into this slide. First, let me just navigate that to the right area, and then I'll give you a minute to quickly take a look, and then we can walk through some of them, right? Again, something similar to the previous slide that you're looking at. So you have payment processing, brokerages for stocks and bond. If you look into this area right over here, let me use some other color because red may be little bit too bright for the screen. Yeah. So if you look into this, all of those are nothing but part of your financial services, right? Investment advisory, where to buy, what to buy, risk management and diversification, right? So if you want to take too much risk, how can you really ensure that the rewards are matching with respect to the risk that you're taking? And how do you diversify your portfolio to have a healthy mix? All the fintechs also operate in this financial services space, right? In banking, typically you will be having an exposure to most of these products, which is saving, checking, fixed deposit, personal loan, all of those things, right? Debit card, credit card, there are a variety of different things, right? Insurance, life, motor, house, travel, other types of insurance, right? How does it a banking and financial services company make money in the process, right? That's the $1 billion question that everybody would be wondering about. And it really depends on what you're looking at, right? So whether you are a pure play bank or you are a financial services company or you are an insurance, right? And the sort of like, the economics may depend on what you're doing, and it may be a blend of all of them, right? So there are financial institutions which may be doing this, this, and this, right? So they're not necessarily only doing this, but they have a variety of different revenue streams that you have to sort of like, focus on, right? Let's take an example. So for banking, the main source of revenue is the difference between how much they earn from a customer when you have actually made the deposit. So they will, let's say, for example, pay you 4% on your FD. I'm just making up, right? When you take a loan from the very same bank, they will lend it at 6% to another customer out there. This difference between 4% and 6%, which is 2%, is what we call as a spread, right? So spread is what basically banks earn on the deposit to make the loans to the other customers, right? So customer A has surplus of the money, customer B needs loan for financing a car or a house and so on and so forth, and they facilitate that transaction. And why do customers, both A and B, reach out to the bank? Because of the trust, right? Hypothetically, customer A can approach directly customer B and say, okay, give me the money and I will actually give you a better rate and all of that, right? But it doesn't work out because we do not have the trust in the system. So that's what the banks really facilitate in terms of making sure that you have confidence on that your money is safe, and when you need a loan, you'll get the loan and all the processing associated with that and so on and so forth, right? They also have other mechanism, like they will have, late fee, ATM fee, minimum balance fee, application fee, so on and so forth, right? And they will also take your applications. So they also take your information and they will take your permission, and then they will sell this information to third parties as well for cross-selling and leveraging your data to monetize that for different purposes, right? So for example, if you take a loan from ICICI Bank, they may take your permission that I would like to share that with my affiliates and partners, right? And those affiliates and partners may be in different areas. Let's say you've taken a loan for buying a house. They may turn around and then share that with some of the interior design companies that, hey, by the way, RP is in market to buy this apartment, and apartment is ready to move in and blah, 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 and good time to touch base with him for the interior designing, right? So then you can see how they can monetize that information. So basically data is what facilitates this last part, which is the commission part, and all the other businesses as well, right? Financial services make the money mostly from the fee revenue, right? So they will have 1% commission, for example, every time you buy or sell a stock, right? And so on and so forth. And they also do what we call as a matchmaking. So matching the buyers to the sellers and so on and so forth, and they will have brokerage for that, right? So commission or brokerage is what the model is. Insurance company make the money mostly from premium, right? The concept of the premium is again entrenched in statistics, which is the law of large numbers, right? So if, let's say, I have sold the car insurance to, I'm just making up something, let's say I've sold the car insurance to 10 million customers. On average, I know 5% of those customers will be claiming the insurance, right? So you will lose the money on these 5 customers. You'll never make the profit on these 5% of the customers. But the 95% of the customers pay you the premium and they never get a penny back on that premium, right? For example, I have taken, car insurance and all of that. And if I haven't claimed anything, and let's say my car insurance is 10,000 rupees per year, and if I have paid that car insurance for 3 years in a row, that's 30,000 rupees that I will never see back from that insurance company. And that is the money that they use to facilitate the claim and honoring the claims for the other customers who may have challenges, right? They have other variety of fee revenue as well, like origination fee, commission, value-added services. They will add up the roadside assistance. They will add up the mortgage assistance. So in case if somebody loses their income, they will take over those things, right? But let's say if somebody doesn't lose their income, then there's no benefit that they derive from it, right? So these are the different types of like the banking and financial services company, and what are their revenue models and what they do. And this is very, very general and at a very, very high level. So I will pause over here and see if there's any questions so far before I shift gears and talk about where exactly the data science fit in. So in terms of some of the nitty-gritties of what really happen in a banking setup, right? And now I'm shifting gears and talking about where do the data scientists really fit in, right? Where do the ML and AI really fit in? And these are some of the terms that you may have already seen based on your maturity in the analytics and some of the aspects related to that. But if not, then nothing to feel bad about, right? So generally, all the AI resources will try to answer these 4 areas. The first one is what has happened, right? Oops, sorry, I messed up this one completely. So the first thing is what has happened, right? So in terms of the historical aspect, right? This is where you will see all your visualization will come in really. Your dashboarding, right? You can use variety of different tools in Python free of cost, right? You can use paid software like a Tableau. You can use Excel. You can use Power BI. All of those things are really basically trying to give the information to your stakeholders in terms of, can I describe what has happened, right? Not describe in terms of a hallway conversation, but describe in terms of the statistics and the numbers, right? So you can say, for example, sales in my personal loan or the new accounts in the personal loans have gone down by 5% in last month. So this is what you're trying to explain, right? And then you may also do slice and dice. So did the personal loan go down by one particular set of cities, right? So maybe you can say, for example, tier 2 cities, I took a hit. Tier 1, I was doing well. Tier 2, I took a hit in terms of the number of loans that I originated. So you're still sort of like, explaining what has happened. The second layer is why it has happened, not just what has happened, but why it has happened. This is also, I will say, probably is more in terms of, that is correct. You can say that, Srikanth, that is more historical aspect, right? Now, in the second layer, in the diagnostic layer, what we're trying to say is not only what has happened, but why it has happened, right? So for example, now you can, I'm just making up something, so don't take it literally. So you can say competitor B came out with this offer where if somebody is applying for a personal loan for the first time, they will waive off 200 bips for the first 2 months, right? Which translate into X dollars of saving or X rupees of saving, and because of that, I have lost customers, right? So at least you have some way of explaining that. These may be facts, taxes that somebody cannot deny. We know that for sure. That has happened, right? So if I look at the market share, I can see the market share of my competitor has gone higher and I have lost my market share. Or these could be your hypothesis, right? You don't know, but at least you have a possible way of explaining that, right? So for example, you can say, okay, you know what, maybe the bank originations or the personal loan originations have gone down because of the COVID, right? That people are not traveling, they're not, if somebody has the flexibility, they are postponing their family functions, their marriages, their vacation plan and all of that, and because of that I have taken it, right? So that is what basically this entire portion really boils down to, which is the step 1 and step 2. EDA trying to pass out the data, peel the onion, figure out what could be the driving factors and what do we learn from it, right? The third part is, based on what you've learned over here, what is it that may happen in the future? And that's where you will see the ML and AI come in. All your predictive model, whether it's the time series model, whether it's fraud prediction model, whether it's propensity to take up the next product, any of those things, and I'll talk about some of those models when we go to next few slides, will come in over here. This is where you will see most of the ML and AI resources focus their time and energy on to really figure out, given what we know has happened in the past, given what we know as the market dynamics, what is it that we can expect to be happening in the future, right? So that's what basically the predictive element boils down to, which is very, very important, because everybody would like to know what is it that will be happening. I mean, you will obviously have certain level of accuracies and inaccuracies attached to that, so I'm not going to go there at this point of time. But that's what basically this tries to accomplish in terms of what is it that may happen in the future. The last part is, right over here, is not only what has happened in the past, but also what we should do, right? So this is where you will actually sort of like, remove your AI and ML hat and put the hat of a business consultant. So, and you will see that when I come to, what it takes for you to be successful in this particular field, you will think like a business person, right? So does it make sense to do something different in our strategy? And if there is something different that we should do, what is it that we should do, right? So for example, you can say, oh yeah, you have lost the share by 5%. And you know what? If the trend continues, that drop is going to be 25%. You better do something about that, right? But what is something that I can do? That's where you will actually work very closely with your business stakeholders to figure out what are the possible options on the table. That again may be coming in from all of these things. So this will tell you the feature importance and basically what factors are very, very important and all that. So this will all be coming in from there. But then you take this and then come out with the prescription, right? Prescription, for example, what is it that you should be doing? And the closest analogy I can think about is like when you go to a doctor. So doctor will check, let's say, and find out that you have a temperature. So it basically tells you that you have a temperature. You tell the doctor that for last 3-4 days I'm running a cold and temperature and so on and so forth. Then comes the diagnostic. So he will conduct some reports and so on and so forth and say, by the way, you are suffering from dengue, right? This is what it has happened. What will happen in the future if you don't take the medicines and don't rest? This will get worse, right? And then prescriptive analytics is basically, whatever you want to prescribe to the patient to really recover from that, right? It could be positive or negative in the business sense. I mean, don't think like, we always work on problems. We also work on opportunities, because if you focus on the problem, you're always looking into the rear view mirror, right? So, but you have to look into the future as well, look into the macro picture of what is happening. So ML and AI focuses both on, historical aspect and what may happen in the future as well. All right, so these are some of the specific models that you will see that we use in the banking and financial services, and each of these models are very, very complex on their own, right? and I'll talk about some of them, not necessarily each one of them. And this is just an indicative list. So for any area you pick, I can at least count like 50 models that that a bank or financial services company might be building, right? Let's pick some of them. Right when you're doing the customer acquisition, right? You cannot go after everybody in the market, right? That will be too expensive a game to play. So you have to really figure out how do I optimize my sales funnel? Who do I target with the campaign? I mean, do I run my campaign on the TV? Do I run my campaign on a particular magazine? Do I pop it up in the Google? Do I run it on Facebook and so on and so forth? So basically all the campaign response modeling. So if you're launching a brand new product, where exactly you'll get the highest response? So that will basically optimize your ROI on your investment, because to acquire a customer, in US, I know for a credit card company like a Capital One or Chase and even Amex and all of that, they spend a mind-boggling $5,000 to acquire a customer, right? That's super expensive. So it's not like, I mean, $5,000 they're going to spend on Shinu, $5,000 they're going to spend on RP. That's aggregated, because if they mail, 1,000 people with certain things, only, 50 will show the interest. Finally, only 5 will come and basically become their customer. So this cost that was incurred for the 1,000 customer is now totally attributed to these 5 customers that we have finally brought on board, right? So that's where the aggregation really comes in. But you can figure out how expensive that is to acquire a customer, not just in the US, but even in India as well. So a lot of this thing really happens over there. Similarly, we do market mix modeling in terms of, what should be the price, what should be the promotion strategy, all the different aspects related to that, right? What should be the right product? Because a product may have different features. So for example, the color of the card is one feature, right? Whether this is Amex, I mean, Amex, for example, not everybody is going to have, but whether I should have a MasterCard or Visa as a network is another feature, right? Whether I should give them a higher line or I should have a lower interest in terms of the APR, that's another feature. So how do you know what is the right product to launch in the market? So that's where we do a lot of A/B testing in terms of figuring out what really happens, and then we can optimize the product based on that, right? A lot of fraud and risk related modeling also comes in there, right? And some people confuse the fraud and risk as one thing. Fraud is basically when you have somebody who's intentionally doing bad things, right? So basically there is no willingness to pay, WTP. There is no willingness to pay. On purpose, they want to fraud the system, right? So they will apply and they will take a loan and they will never come back, right? Defaulters, exactly right, Shrikant, right? Versus the risk, which is ability to pay. So you are a genuine customer and you have taken a loan and you really want to pay back, but because of some economic situation and so on and so forth, you're not able to pay back, right? So those are very, very different sort of modelings that you have to do right when we are actually doing the customer acquisition, right? So you have to really focus on how we really optimize my risk. If you say I'm not going to take any risk, I'm only going to give to the customers who are 100% safe, then your portfolio will not be growing. So you have to take certain amount of risk, right? Same applies for all of us. We have to take certain amount of risk in our life to really reach a higher reward level, right? So same applies over here, and that's what we try to undermine. Fraud is a huge area, not just for the customer acquisition, but portfolio management, deepen engagement, churn, all of those areas. So you can think about fraud happening everywhere, right? I mean, it's more common than you think about, right? And I have this as my focus area as well in terms of how do we detect fraud, because fraudsters are actually unfortunately smarter people than we are, right? And they will always find a new way to cheat the system, and they will always be one step ahead. So how do you actually catch up with them and minimize your exposure to the fraud is what we focus on over here, right? Portfolio management, we focus on customer lifetime value. So some of you may have heard about this CLTV, right? So when you actually look into any customer, the customer has a certain life cycle with you, has a certain value that they generate for the company and so on and so forth. Based on that, you will do certain strategies with them, right? Not all customers are the same. Different customers have different attributes and different values and different needs and wants. So you have to do the customer segmentation based on the statistical approaches, and then you can actually target them, right? Again, you have default and what are the product usage and fraud and so on and so forth, right? Deepening the engagement. So once you have the customer acquired, you have segregated them. How do you deepen the engagement with them? What are the products that you should sell them, right? So if I never take a personal loan, for example, by the way, I've never taken a personal loan so far. If I've never taken a personal loan, and if I keep on getting a call from my bank saying, hey, I have a personal loan available for you, I will, over a period of time, start to get a little bit angry with them, right? Because I don't like that product, right? I mean, why are you selling me that product? So not randomly you can sell any product to any customer. So you have to really figure out what are the right things that I should be proposing to a customer, right? So that's where you will have, models like next best product, NBP. So if I know that you have already taken a debit card and you have, X dollars of saving in my account, what is it that I should propose to you, right? So I cannot get directly go and so you will see that that's where you have to really figure out what is the right product that we should be selling, product bundling, price and offer sensitivity. So you have to really figure out how elastic is the customer. If I raise the price, what exactly is going to happen to the customer? Can I go and change the deposit rate? Can I go and change the credit card interest rate and so on and so forth? Variety of different things, right? And then customer satisfaction also, which is the net promoter score. And that becomes a yardstick of how sticky your customers will be and how likely the customers will be promoting your business, right? So there are like 3 categories, and I'm sure everybody has seen that when you go to any, car servicing, any of those areas, they will say, sir, give me 9 or 10, right? Because that's the promoter. So people who will promote your business versus people who are detractors, 1 to 6, and versus a neutral in the middle and all of that. So we focus on those and try to maximize the NPS score, right? In terms of the last piece, because not every customer is going to hang around with you for a longer period of time, how do you really do, who are the more likely customers who are going to attract from the portfolio? All of these are being handled by the ML and the AI, right? How do you go and run the proactive campaigns to retain those customers? Because if the customer has already gone beyond a certain point, it will be very, very difficult for you to go and bring them back, right? How do you activate the inactive customers, right? So for example, that's where you see that banks will be running an offer that first time when you use this card, you'll get 500 rupees back, right? And so on. So because they want to activate you, which is where how can I become top of the wallet, right? Both the physical wallet and the e-wallet. Like, I mean, if you have 5 cards, how do I make sure that when you think about the first card or second card, it's me, right? So I have to become a top of the wallet, which is where your wallet share analysis and all of that will really come in. And that also relates to this area, right? So let's continue to move down. Okay, so we talked about all the different things why these things are important for a bank, but what is driving them, right? What is driving the banking and financial services for them to tap into the AI and ML? And by the way, I mean, banks have been the first one to grab onto the overall AI and ML story. The risk models, the fraud models have been using AI and ML for a very, very long period of time, but it's evolving faster than ever before. Why? First reason is the personalization of product services, right? So one size fits all does not work anymore, right? You cannot say you can have any car like Ford used to say, as long as that is in black, right? Or whatever that color is. So that doesn't work. Customer wants customization and personalization. So not everything works for every customer the same way. The digitization of the apps and like the whole banking solution is creating so much more data than a typical bank would handle, right? My father used to work for RBI, Reserve Bank of India, and he would be doing a lot of paperwork, and his colleagues will be doing certain paperwork. Now RBI has, I think, probably gone to a 20% of the size that they used to be having earlier because of all this data being generated in the digital format, right? It's all digital. It's all stored in the servers and so on and so forth. So RBI does not need to have people sitting in their offices to churn this data and then figure out what is happening. We can have third parties. We can have other partners actually analyze this information and tons of data being available. So when you come to a particular site, what did you like? What did you not like? Where exactly your attention was? What buttons you clicked? How long you hang around on a particular site? All of those is being captured. The third thing is people do not want a particular time to do the banking. Now it's anytime, anywhere, real-time banking. So if the money comes in, I want to know now. If I want to transfer, I want to do it now. I don't have to wait for the banking hours and so on and so forth. So that is basically round-the-clock banking. And again, that basically puts additional pressure on the people to take that decision in the real time, right? So, for example, the company that I was working for earlier called Cabbage, and you can look up on the net. So they would approve 95 or 97% of the loans within 7 minutes. If you basically meet the criteria, your loan will be approved within 7 minutes, and the money will come in, as early as within few hours to maybe few days, depending on what you're looking at. But I mean, there are cases where they come into the site, they apply, they get a decision, and within 5 hours they have the money in the bank, right? And they're doing that at 2 a.m. in sitting in their garage. If I'm a startup owner, I don't have time to go to the bank to do this transaction, right? So I would like to do that right now on the net, right? So that's where basically the anytime, anywhere, real-time banking is coming in. And I cannot have the credit underwriters or people manual human effort to be sitting at 3 a.m. in the morning and analyze the data of these customers who are applying and then make a decision, right? Cannot have that. So that's where the AI really comes in. That, I mean, I have all the data that I need. I have the AI and the ML engines running in the background, and I can churn out the probability of this customer being a good customer, and then therefore I can make a decision on that, right? The fourth factor which is driving that is the diminishing customer loyalty. Nowadays, customers are not as loyal as they used to be earlier, and we will switch easily as long as there's a value prop, right? And that basically puts additional pressure on each of these BFSI company to figure out a way to retain the customer, to keep on customer engaged with the products and services and so on and so forth, right? Fifth area that is driving that over-reliance on the AI and ML is the regulations and the compliance. Things are getting more and more tight as you talk about, right? So there are privacy policies, there are regulations, what information you can ask, cannot ask, what you can act upon, right? There are tons of different things which have come in, which basically has restricted the movement in terms of what can be done, cannot be done. If you make a mistake, all the money that you've made in 5 years will be gone in 1 month by billions of dollars of fine that the banks have to pay to, either federal government or some other ways, right, or European Union. They will fine big time if you violate any of those regulations, right? So you cannot make error anytime in terms of your decisions that you're making. So that has, put a very, very tight boundary conditions around us, right? The other factors which are driving the trend are new entrants. So the barrier to entry is basically lower and lower right now. So I don't need to invest in a big branch. I don't need to have the office set up and all of those things. I can be a very good agile, nimble company that is totally operating on internet, and I can be very, very effective in terms of challenging some of the big players out there, right? So the new entrants will keep the banks on their toes and trying to figure out how they can stay ahead in the overall competition. IoT is basically Internet of Things, right? Everything is connected, interconnected, and you need to really look into all the data that is being generated. So where does the customer go? What are the shopping habits? Their social network, their clickstream data before they come to their site, your site, what sites they have been to on, right, and so on and so forth. And that basically helps you in terms of the first theme that we talked about at the very beginning, which is the personalization. How do you make sure that the products that you're coming out with are personalized for the customer that you're looking at, right? And last one, and this is by no stretch of imagination a comprehensive list, but I think that covers fairly a very, very vast array of topics that are driving this trend, is the consistent omni-channel experience, right? So if I go to a bank branch versus an ATM versus talk to a teller versus come to your app versus log into your the net banking, I want to have the same experience, right? I mean, I don't want to see different colors, different interfaces, different challenges and all of that. So I don't have time. People are getting very, very restless nowadays, right? So I mean, the moment you have me click on 5 buttons to get to one answer, I mean, I'm already getting sort of disengaged with respect to the entire interface. So the UX has to be paramount, and the consistency of the experience, the user experience has to be paramount as well. So AI enables sort of, help you identify those roadblocks, those areas where the customer is facing the friction, or where the customer is spending too much time, or they're liking certain things and all of that, right? So that's where you basically have these engines sort of coming and helping you with respect to the overall journey, right? Now I'm just keeping an eye on the time as well. So we talked about all of this. So then the question becomes, okay, fine, I buy all of that, but how big is this, right? I will begin with this picture first on your right, and all of these are clickable links, so you can actually go and look up later on, or you can just Google that. So if you look into the overall data science and analytics job in India, roughly half, I mean, I think this is a conservative picture, my estimate is roughly half or slightly more than half will be in BFSI world, right? So if you have overall size of the market of 1 million data scientists, basically 500,000 data scientists will only be working, or 5 lakh data scientists will be working only in the BFSI sector. Then you have all the other sectors combined, like technology, retail, auto, right, pharmaceutical, other things. I mean, I'm just giving you some flavor of them. All of that combined will be 50%, and BFSI will be at least 50%, if not more than that. And this is the data coming in from one of the job portals over here, right? In terms of the dollars, this is expected to be $16 billion market just in India alone. And if you combine this to the overall world's dynamics, it will be at least a multiple of 100x or 1000x, right? In terms of the size of the market and the growth that we're looking at. So that is how big the market is and the need for the data scientists in the BFSI. And when I say BFSI, go back to the very original slide. I'm not talking about the banks alone. I'm talking about Paytm, I'm talking about PhonePe, I'm talking about Square, I'm talking about any sort of banking product that you look into. All of those will be there covered in the BFSI umbrella. Right? Finally, what are the skills required to be successful in the ML and AI in general, and banking in particular? You must really enjoy working with the numbers, right, and the quantitative stuff. You must develop an understanding of the banking products. Banks are probably, or BFSI, I'll say, are probably the most complex business to understand. They're not very straightforward, right? One of the reasons of the financial crisis in the 2008 was because they had a mortgage, then they created derivatives on that, then they created derivatives on that, right? And there were so many derivatives that it had no connection whatsoever to the original property that we had, right? And people are trading in derivatives and imagining a hypothetical values and tying it back to the original asset class and so on and so forth, right? So there are a lot of things that can go wrong. So that's where the complexity of the banking product is really very, very high compared to some of the other products that we have, right? You have to constantly learn, because I said, I mean, there are new players coming in and they keep on bringing the new ways of looking into the information. So you have to constantly learn. I mean, that is also true for any other field. Coding skills are definitely required, whether it's Python or R or even SAS. A lot of big banks like Citi, for example, or HSBC, right? All these big banks are still on SAS, and the related tools maybe R and maybe Python and SQL. SAS predominantly because of the regulations, right? So if the regulator does not understand Python, there's no point in showing him a Python code or showing her a Python code, right? So then you need to be doing your entire modeling in the SAS, so that when federal regulator comes in, she's able to see what exactly you've done, whether you are discriminating against a particular race, religion, ethnicity, class, so on and so forth, and they would like to ascertain that your models are not doing any of those things, right? So coding skills, quantitative stuff, knowledge, and that's where basically you'll see the trio coming in, which is your domain knowledge. Just like anything else, your domain knowledge is one thing, your technical knowledge, which is the coding skills, and then your statistical knowledge is also very, very important in terms of understanding when somebody says that I have a significant result over here in terms of the t-test. We should be in a position to understand what does it really mean, right? I mean, how do I know whether something is significant or not significant, and so on and so forth. And all of this is sort of like coming in terms of the last two pillars of the predictive and prescriptive. So you might be great in terms of doing the number crunching, you might be great in terms of building your model, But if you're not great in terms of taking that model and telling that in English, working with your stakeholders to influence them, to bring them on the same page, think structurally about the problem, break it down in terms of, what is that the customer will gain. Not exactly because I've learned this technique, so let me go build a model, but you have to think customer backwards. What exactly is it that my customers will gain from it, right? And then I have to come back and figure out what are the techniques that we have to really go and actually implement and all of that. And how do I take those techniques, build a model, come back to my stakeholders and tell them in a meaningful way that they can understand. All of those really come in. So I will pause over here, folks. This was it in terms of the topics I wanted to cover, and turn it over to Shinu as well.
Thank you, Aarti. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Shinu.
Okay, great. Okay, so if there are questions, otherwise I just want you to, bring to your attention the next slide. So here we have mentors like Ratnakar Pandey, who has been in this field, not just on building models, but solving business problems. So the kind of focus that we have at REVA and REVA University, we are so glad that we are able to create programs which really bring the right skill set, which is the requirement for the industry today. So if you look at the conventional MBA program, they would have learned a lot of conventional financial lag, the kind of concepts, but then very few have these kind of skills being embedded today in the program. So our program, Aarti, if you can move the slide to the next one.
Yeah.
So, any of these, what Aarti has just mentioned, that a combined technical, functional skill is what is expected today from the industry, not just a knowledge-based degree. So these programs, when we have a program on business analytics, which is predominantly on solving business problems using AI and ML, we use a series of techniques as well as domains which our participants work on real-time projects. So we would have a complete stack of the right tools. So starting from what Aarti had mentioned about moving from SQL to Python and R to build the models, to visually represent it using Tableau. But that is on one side. But understanding the domain well, understanding how the current use cases, and get these business problems from the stakeholders, make it into a very robust model building, and then deploying back so that you can see the business results, whether it's revenue enhancement or cost reduction or process improvement. This is what is the real need of our industry, particularly in BFSI. So if you have not made use of this explosion of data, like what Aarti was telling me years back, when most of the banks were hesitant to build more data-driven models. But now, irrespective of whether you're a conventional bank or the latest fintech startup on the corner who's making $1 billion kind of a business, everybody is forced now to build these models. So we are so glad that Aarti has put a brilliant presentation covering the depth and width of the use cases, the AML applications, and the huge opportunities present in this BFSI segment. If you could move to the next slide, Aarti. So if you see here, the kind of program structure is that we would help you with understanding the right data, get it through the ETL process, apply statistical methods, all using data-driven use cases, and then get on to modules or domain-specific modules. Financial analytics is one of the core modules here in our MBA program, and it is taught using similar use cases and models. So you would see that it is the skill that which we are developing here is very, very very practical, that you can immediately go and apply and work with the stakeholders to bring real difference. So we just want to share that experience, and we have a series of projects that we work with. which has been put on the right, the other side of the screen, starting from connecting the dots. So finance again is one of the functions in the organization. You have so many other functions, but everything connected with data today, all working for stakeholders' returns or improvement on the business metrics. So models on enterprise analytics, models on people analytics, using NLPs, even in financial analytics, though there are so much of models using, say, more of structured data analytics, but even banks are moving towards contextual, text-based analytics models. And RP himself is working on text-based analytics right now in Amazon. Similarly, so many interesting projects based on the domains. So we are so glad that today all of you could join and get a glimpse of the power that AI/ML can bring in companies like or sector like BFSI, and how can we get into this with the right skill set. That's why we have created an ecosystem here at REVA University, bringing people like RP who would help you to build that skill sets for the next generation, and working professionals who are connected today with us, that can I move to a great career transition. I might be in a banking sector doing certain operations, but can I apply AML in my day-to-day life and bring not only change in my life, in my career, but also to the bank that I'm serving or the customers that I'm serving, right? So this is what our intention is. Our programs are project-driven, experiential learning, lab-based, project-based, research-based, guided by mentors who are senior industry leaders like Ratnakar. And we are so glad that all of you could join today. And if any specific questions are there, I would request RP, or if any questions are there on our program, please, we can take a minute and then address those questions.
This seminar on analytics in manufacturing industries and IT industry would be helpful as well. Yep, I totally agree, Halima, with you. Shrikant says, I've enrolled in the MSc in AI. Do we cover all the modules in BFSI? Yes, so maybe something that you can answer.
Okay. So MTech or MSc AI program is slightly looked differently, dealt differently compared to an MBA program, because the market expectation from an AI engineer or an AI scientist, which is the MSc outcome, would be slightly different. But definitely the fundamentals of statistical or ML models remain the same. Use cases differ. We would look at all the models which is, say, RP would have mentioned as part of some of the modules. It will not be called out as a BFSI domain-based models like what you see here in the MBA program. It would be more on, say, you would get more deeper into structured data related ML building or text related ML models, which could be coming from banking sector, but it is not pertaining to any specific domain. It is pertaining to certain technical skills that an AI engineer requires, which is, say, vision, speech or text, or more of the real ML based projects. So it is slightly positioned differently, but you would end up building, say, a CLTV model, or you would end up building, say, a churn prediction or a risk scoring model, but in a little different perspective, because the concentration here there is the improving the model efficiency on a technical side of it. But here in the MBA program, it is more of problem solving using AI/ML. So there is a slight difference, but nevertheless, the fundamentals and the kind of techniques you would use to solve these problems remain the same. RP, you want to say something on?
Yeah, definitely. For the broad scheme of things, any model, any technique that you learn can be industry agnostic. So I think Halima had a point similar to that. I mean, whether we can do something similar to the other industry. So yeah, I mean, there are no, as far as I can tell, I mean, there are no industry-specific solutions that you will see broadly being used. So I mean, whatever you learn in the NLP can be lifted and shifted to the other industries, right? but the highest amount of the complexity in the data is generally in the banking and financial services. So if you can do this over here, you can apply it in some other areas as well. Right? Just to give you an example, like, I mean, how does it we that understand from a banking transaction, you know, who are the sender, who are the receiver, and so on and so forth, right? So we look into the transaction text and we do the text mining based on that. When did somebody send, what was the amount, and so on and so forth. Based on that, we establish a pattern, right? Because I cannot really have somebody look into billions of PDF documents to do that assessment, right? So all of those things that you see over here can be lifted and shifted to other industries as well, right? Halima, I have a question on VBA as well. So VBA is something, Halima, that works good on when you have a data which can be managed within the Excel sort of thing, right? So what we generally deal with is a big data, right, which may not necessarily lend very well in the Excel format. And whatever we do in the VBA can be done much more easily using Python and some of the other languages that we have. But there's nothing wrong in knowing the VBA and doing the stuff in the VBA, but I'm saying the whole AI and ML approach sort of like, you know, bypasses that and goes directly in the coding methodology. Yeah?
Yes. Can we also put the next screen, Happy, just as a concluding slide? And to answer Halima's again, we just want to say that all these skills, if you have great VBA skill, Excel skill, these are all good starting points actually. So if you get onto us more of an automation engineers and all that, you know that from VBA you are now moving to more of other tools in the automation. But in ML is the next step. As Karthi said, that you bypasses those and then actually build predictive model much faster and much useful way because of the power of ML algorithms compared to a rule-based automation, right? We run a series of programs, one in AI, which is an MTech MS, kind of one of a kind in India itself, which is also AICT and UGC approved. We run with multiple partners. All industry leaders teach in our program. We have a cybersecurity program, which is also very uniquely positioned. And we have our business analytics MBA program, plus a series of customized programs in these areas. So we look forward to your continued patronage, and we really thank Ratnakar Pandey again for wonderfully covering as much as possible that you could in this short span of time. The detailed look on from customer acquisition to customer attrition. I think that was a wonderful storytelling that we could all get a great glimpse. And please connect with Ratnakar. He is a very active Quora writer. He is one of the top Quora writers, and he is a great blogger. He is a great speaker, as you have already experienced. And we are so glad that all of you stayed back. And thank you so much, and stay safe.